See you down there. Yeah, my brother.
Have fun. See you in a few.
Let's fucking get it. All right, 3, 2, 1. See ya.
Hello, friends. You're listening to Exit Point,
a podcast about the advancement of base jumping and the exploration of its culture.
Join us for valuable insights and gripping stories from some of the world's top adventure athletes.
Oh my God, that's the sickest thing I ever did in my life! Woo!
Dante, welcome to Exit Point.
Thank you, Laurent.
It's great to have you here. I've really been looking forward to this conversation for a couple of reasons. One, you just seem amazingly proficient at a wide variety of disciplines, and so I'm really excited to dive into that with you. And then also, I think we share some similarities here. About 14 years ago, I believe it is now, I moved to France to pursue flying in the Alps, in the mountains, my wingsuit primarily, but speed riding and paragliding and all that good stuff. And you spend a lot of time in the Alps now too as well. So
yeah, I'm trying to catch up to you. I think your French is a lot better than mine. But yeah, man, it's the place to be for having maximum fun in the mountains. So
It is. And it's funny because everybody who lives locally that might not be into mountain sports is sort of like, what? You're from California. What are you doing here?
Yeah.
Like, why would you leave California to live in the Alps? And it's really to be close to these mountains that have just amazing accessibility.
For sure. And yeah, once you're over here, you have the opportunity. I mean, there's many benefits, but the main is you don't have to do a big transatlantic trip to, do the jumps, do the flying you want. And yeah, you have more time to explore and, with your progression and the culture, you feel a more relaxed pace in a quick trip. So
That's interesting. You say the culture too. I agree with that. There's more of you're less of a wild, crazy person and more of just a mountain athlete.
Yeah. And around here, I come from Colorado. And people spending time in the mountains, going hard skiing, rock climbing, all the things. That's a normal thing. But here it's at a whole different level. In Colorado, if you said you paraglide, people are like, oh, what's that? That's crazy. And here you're driving down the street and you pass 4 people with little wind socks dangling from their mirror. And you're like, man, if you don't paraglide, you're not. It's like skiing here,
Absolutely.
Basics, so.
It's a family sport.
Yeah.
If you go to the Brevant, you're seeing kids who are like 10 years old doing their first paragliding tandem.
Yeah.
And it's just a sort of a common thing for kids and
It's a normal thing.
grandmas. Everyone gets a taste of it. It's pretty cool.
For sure.
So I started this off by saying like you're proficient in so many different disciplines. Maybe you could introduce yourself a little bit because your bio says you're a professional air sports athlete. What does that mean?
That's a good question. At the end of the day, I like having fun with my friends and anything flying. I love flying. The longer story, we might touch on this, but I've been exposed to it since I was a young kid. But then it was about 18 years old that I was really introduced to skydiving, and shortly after base jumping, speed flying, paragliding. Haven't really stopped since. I don't like to identify with like one specific air sport because I enjoy them all. And then I do them at different frequencies throughout the year. So, but yeah, I think it's, I've been super lucky to be able to make enough money to live and pretty much spend my whole time, full-time air sports. So doing this all the time. So
let's break that down a little bit. And before we get any farther, maybe you could tilt the microphone from here like that, just to be underneath your mouth a little bit.
So.
Or you could like this. Yeah, that's better.
That's better?
Yeah, I think
Cool.
that's going to be better.
There we go. Cool.
And I've been really into paragliding lately. And, I'm just like base jumping, especially wingsuit base jumping is like a foundational thing. I do less of it nowadays just because I'm just really excited about learning. And, I'm like a baby in paragliding acro, and it's just really exciting to see the progression, feel the moves, nail something for the first time and all that. And I've been watching some of your Instagram videos, just trying to get familiar with you and what you're all about. And you're a good acro pilot, and you're ripping speed flyer, you're speed riding, and you're base jumping regularly. That's a lot to do, and that's a lot to be good at. Do you ever feel like those disciplines can, or being perhaps spread so widely is a detriment, or do you feel like it's a positive for you in general as far as an air sports person?
Both. I think it's a benefit at the end of the day, because you're learning to fly different mediums, how you do things, how you interact with the air. I think it's a detriment if you're trying to be really, really good at one thing, because you're spending your time doing other things. If you want to be the best or really good at one thing, you have to commit to that one thing. And that's great. My priorities, I could care less to be, the best base jumper, the best acro pilot in the world. There's people who are going to do way better with this. My kind of life vision in 20, 30 years from now, I want to be really good at everything. So, every flight, every season, doing each activity, I feel like you're getting, that 3-4% better. And over time that adds up. However, when you are shifting from activities, you lose some progress. For me, it's kind of doing the multiple sports has kept me interested in flying in general. I'm super ADHD. I get bored of things very quickly. If I only base jumped, I would have quit many years ago, or only skydived. And now I kind of have a routine. So in the summers, I'm spending them mostly base jumping and speed flying. And then fall and spring, I'm doing a lot of paragliding. That's like turkey season, in Ala Deniz, training there. I've been trying to commit 2 months a year out there for training. And then, some XC here and there, and then winter for speed riding and skiing. So when you spread it out that way, you finish the summer base jumping, you do a few hundred jumps, you're like, whew, like that was awesome, but I want to do something different. I've spent enough time, packing rigs and doing this. And then you're super looking forward to paragliding or speed riding. And by the time that's over, then you're super fired up on base jumping. And the other positive of that is, number one, you're not super current. So you get back into the swing of things. You're pretty scared. You have things to learn and you're fired up. And yeah, it's a nice balance, I think, I found in life shifting the sports.
Nice. I like it. Keeps it fresh. You don't get burnt out. And that excitement is pretty key in terms of training and repetition and being enthusiastic about what it is you're doing. Yep. I think it took me a lot longer than it did for you to realize that, because I'm very obsessive and I would just really couldn't stop thinking about it, couldn't stop doing it. And it isn't until I think a few years ago where it was like, okay, instead of putting 110% into one particular thing, just make it a routine. And with time, it's going to arrive. And I think with age and maturity, I'm understanding that better and better, whether it be for paragliding, for base jumping, for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, whatever it is. It's just sort of like, don't get focused on, being good now. It's like, make it a routine and just let it cook.
For sure. And yeah, having that time off, it balances, it's the yin and yang. It balances your perspective of things. If you have, a few months of not going hard with jumping, you may see techniques or jumps that other people are doing, and you can think about things more, have some more downtime, rather than just like, oh, I just landed from a jump. Next thing is like, cool, pack, go back up. You have zero reflection point. But if you have a few months, you're sitting in your home, sitting in your van, and it's snowing or windy, you're like, oh, let me think about some goals. Let me think about what I want to strive for, put energy into. And I think it can be almost a more efficient learning process to have that time off and have the proper time to reflect and think about the things you're doing. So,
do you have a particular visualization process that you do, or is it just reflection? That's something that comes naturally to you about thinking about the jump, putting it back there, out there, or the flight or anything?
Are you talking on like a daily basis?
Well, you were talking about when it's a weather day and you're that reflection process. So is it actual visualization? Is it just letting it sink in? I mean, I'll throw in just an example. Maybe that'll help us. You recall what you do, but tunnel flying, for example, whether it be the wingsuit tunnel or vertical tunnel, whatever, it's just sort of like, you can be completely overwhelmed with the learning process real fast. So what I learned, and which is pretty common knowledge now, I think, is that, you do 3 days of training and then you take a break. Yep. And that break is incredible for learning. Like you come back that 4th, 5th day and it's just like, wow.
Yeah. It's like a restart. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I think let's see, visualization and reflection. For me, it's not so much the physical like muscle memory of things, but more like, if you're going full on, 8 a.m. till sunset, jumping, acro flying, all that, it's intense mentally, physically, and it, just like the tunnel flying stuff, it can create a block for more learning and more things to come. And I think that can be, in the tunnel, it's fine. You just, bounce off the wall or you crash into the floor in the wingsuit tunnel if you don't stick a transition. But, if you're doing pretty full on jumps, tracking where you need to track, or wingsuit flying, or, maneuvers in acro where, like, if you touch the outside brake 1 inch too much, like, you will fall into your wing. If you have that fatigue, it can put you in a dangerous spot, risk-wise, and having that reset helps for the risk side of it. So I don't know if that answered your question there, but...
No, it didn't. But I mean, that's a good point, right? It's like understanding that your fatigue level and being recovered for a flight. But I mean, I guess we can move on. Basically, what I was kind of wanted to understand is if, like, you have a particular practice in terms of ingraining skills that you're learning, and while you're not doing it.
I think if there's anything, it would probably be like video debriefing myself. So thinking about, like, okay, why? We'll talk about acro for now. Like, okay, why was this, why was I having closed wingtips on this? And really, like, at the end of the day, looking at videos, looking at people on Instagram or YouTube, like how they're doing the maneuver, studying it, calling a friend, talking for a few hours, talking shit. And then, some acro stuff will pop up, or just getting different, being able to see the bigger picture a little bit more. Mainly for me, it's through video though. Like, I always wear a camera, mainly for like self debrief, looking back at things. And that's probably the biggest tool I would say I use. So,
okay.
Yeah.
What about at the exit point? Do you have a particular flow that goes on before you jump? Do you visualize the jump? Do you have a little, mantra? I mean, that's just kind of a fancy way for vocalizing your
like a ritual or something. Not really. I think the biggest thing for me, and it starts at the beginning of the day when I wake up with, an agenda or whatever, is just checking in with, like, my mental state and kind of where I'm at. Base jumping and all these flying things are pretty physically easy to do. Like, it's not, whether you're in a good or bad headspace, you can still perform what you need to do. But really just the mental state of, like, okay, like, am I feeling present? Am I feeling relaxed? Even standing on the exit, before you go, it's like, deep breath. All right, let's just relax. Let's get to baseline. And that changes from, if you're going to a new exit you've never done and you're quite intimidated, that process can be a little bit harder to relax and calm down. Or if you're going to a jump that you've done, 9 times that same day, it's almost the opposite. You're like, okay, like, we're back here, but, like, this is a new jump, this is the one that matters right now. So let's get in the correct headspace. And both ends of the spectrum. No specific mantra. I'm not tying my left shoe before my right or any of that, but it's always, thorough gear checks, making sure I'm good with myself, people I'm there with, everyone's kind of in the same vibe. And over time, you do it without thinking, it becomes habit. And you realize when it's not normal. If you're with a big group of people, you're like, whoa, this is feeling different. Or, if you had 3 coffees in the morning, you're like, okay, like, let's take an extra deep breath here. So,
right. So self-regulating, making sure that you're calm. It's a familiar place for you then, where you're just trying to reach that, okay, this is what the go state's like. Yeah. Okay. And what kind of base jumping are you most excited about these days? Because when you came up as a potential guest, you were recommended by a couple of really good friends. So I first thing I went to your Instagram page, and it just seemed like you were a slider down expert or specialist. And I'm seeing a lot of stuff in Lauterbrunnen now. Where are you with your base jumping? What are you excited about? What are you focusing on?
Yeah, I mean, I love all sorts of jumping. Like you said, it was a lot of slider down before coming out here to Europe and spending more time. I think I have like 13 or 1400 slider down jumps. And then, most of them in the States. And then, and since coming out here, getting a lot more into the terminal world, I think at the moment, the jumps I do the most are probably 2-piece tracking jumps. Have a lot of fun with this. I think it's really, really tricky to be at a high level with it and consistent. So having a lot of fun with that. Slick tracking as well. More technical slick tracking, I guess. Just trying to like really get performance out of it, not just move away from a cliff. It has been really a fun process to get better at.
Really technical jumps, trying to fly things like rugs and
man, cardboard
tarps
flies
and
nice, man.
cardboard.
Yeah, I was smoking a 2-piece with a piece of cardboard on my chest. I was like, wow, this is fun, you know. I think that was just, we were getting a little bored, so we were like, let's change it up. Let's see if we can fly some cardboard. At the end of the day, my favorite thing is experiencing new places. So that's been my motivation kind of from the get-go of base jumping, is to be able to jump the world. And to do that, you need to have skills in all parts of base jumping. That's what base jumping is for me. It's not just slider down jumping. It's not just wingsuiting. It's being able to do all the different disciplines. And I enjoy learning more than anything. So yeah, having fun, being able to go jump anything you want. Last year, I got a lot more into the wingsuit side of things. I think I did 100 wingsuit jumps or so this summer. That's been really fun. I'm not super into it like a lot of people are, but having the skills to kind of go to most jumps with friends and enjoy the mountains and jump exit points you wouldn't do tracking or slider down
when you say you like to go to new places, the wingsuit really opens up possibilities to be able to go to many different exit points, obviously with this better start performance.
For sure. Yeah. Like, you know, it's like, okay, you could static line this and fly your canopy for 10 minutes, or you could go wingsuit and like backfly and have some fun with your friends. And yeah, it's just a different world. And trying to get to the point, I think in the next year or two, where I'm like really comfortable with that, kind of going to most places is the goal for now. And that will kind of, I think, complete the well-rounded jumping goal for myself. So.
So do you feel like you're being patient with the wingsuit, or is it something that you're just waiting for to feel like a certain sensation, or is it like a feeling that you know you'll be ready? What is it? What is that process for you?
I think for me, my first introduction to base jumping, like a lot of people, was seeing a wingsuit video. It was the Oki Somers Dreamlines 4. Like that was the coolest video in middle school. I would set up the projector in my garage, like show friends, like, wow, this is crazy. Look at this. And then my actual exposure to base jumping in person was slider down jumping. And getting into base jumping, it was more like being able to go jump in the city was my first goal with jumping, and that's still my favorite type of jumping is urban jumping.
Urban jumping is your favorite?
Yeah, I love
it. Here
it.
you are, you have a van living in the Alps, and you're like dreaming about going to the city to jump.
I love it, man. It's so good. It's so good. Yeah, different places. There's urban jumps here. They're not all that tall, but you know, find a little apartment flat in Geneva and send it off there. But no, for wingsuits for me, like I have no specific goals. Like I could care less about the short start stuff. I don't want to do gainers in a wingsuit. I don't want to fly through trees. Like I really see no appeal for that in me. It's really just being able to go to the jumps with friends that do wingsuit, because I want to hang out with them, fly and see nature. And yeah, I'm not a hardcore wingsuiter by any means. I don't think I will be, but I want to have the repetitions and the skills to be able to jump most places. So
competent and confident. Yeah. You're known through mutual friends as being very humble. I'm wondering if you're aware of that and understand that, you know, like I had this conversation with John DeVore about how important humility is, but also having confidence to pull off the things that you're doing. Is that something you think about? Do you see where that line between humility and confidence lies and how they're both important?
I don't know, the humble side of things, I think there's nothing glamorous about what we do. Like it's a pretty dumb sport at the end of the day. Like we're jumping off rocks and wingsuits. Like there's no glory to that. So, you know, that doesn't make you a better person. It doesn't make you a better person to go skydive. It doesn't make you a better person to own a Lamborghini. Like, you know, just be a good person at the end of the day. And whatever avenue someone wants to go with that. However, with base jumping specifically in air sports, you have to know you're going to stick it, and you have to have that confidence in yourself. and kind of the ego to be like, oh yeah, like I can do this. Balancing that with, not being a dick to people. Yeah, you have to have that confidence in yourself to pull stuff off, especially, when you're getting into places where you stick it or you fail. There's only two options. You have to know you're going to do it, and you have to trust your skills, say that you've done the training, put in the reps, and kind of be like, yeah, I got this. I can do it. I've done all this other badass shit. I've put in the reps for this. Like, yeah, I totally got this. So I guess that's the ego confidence side of.
It's important. We got to have that ego.
Yeah. Yeah. If you didn't have the ego, you wouldn't have the confidence in yourself to go huck yourself off a rock. So.
Or the sense of self-preservation.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm kind of curious, because you're doing all these different disciplines. Mm-hmm. I wonder if you could put it on a scale for us in terms of technicality and physicality about what's harder and what it's easier.
Between acro, speed flying, paragliding, base jumping, skydiving.
Yes.
Like this. Let's see. I think sports like speed flying and skydiving is very, it's physically learned, right? It's the muscle memory. It's the visualization or the visuals you pick up that are going to make you successful, right? Knowing where to put your body, where to put your hands, your legs for, head down carving, for example. That's stuff you can only learn through the muscle memory and repetition of doing something physically. There's a mental side to it, obviously, as well. But, with base jumping, grabbing your toggles, like having the quick reactions, whatnot, that comes from repetition with that and like the physical side. Whereas, let's take cross-country paragliding. At the end of the day, it's really just weight shift, pulling on some strings. If you have a collapse, you need to know what to do and whatnot in those situations. But it's a lot more mental, scanning the terrain. You're like, oh, cool, I'll probably get a thermal here. Like the strategy and that's the stuff you learn through, education and meteorology and studying the terrain, where you're going to fly, people you're with. Everyone has similar skills in terms of the piloting, at a basic level for XC paragliding, cross-country paragliding. But that's more of the mental game, I think. But then there's sports that blend the two a lot, like acro. That's one of the reasons I've had so much fun with it, is it's the perfect combination of both. And canopy piloting is my favorite thing. So super precise technical piloting with intense physical feelings, high G, disorientation, you're facing backwards, all this, but also the mental side. With acro stuff, you'll have the best run of your life. You're like, whoa, I stuck it every time. And then you go do the same run again and it's just a disaster. It's falling apart. You're like, what changed? And it's just the mental side of it.
Right.
And, some mornings you wake up and you're like super fired up, super focused, and you screw the run up. And then there's a day where you're kind of hungover and you go up and you don't really care how you're flying. You're not thinking about it too much. And it just like sticks. And you're like, what? This is so weird. There's a big mental side to it. So I think ranking it like skydiving, back to your original question, skydiving and base jumping, speed flying, a lot more physical along with acro. And then things like paragliding, it's a lot more like mentally learned. And with speed flying and base, it blends the decision making of the mental side more. So mentality.
Yeah, decision making. I think it all sort of plays into it. I've gotten a lot from XC paragliding because you have that, you need to have that grit to keep going from one challenge to another throughout the day. And if you don't have the grit to continue on, you bomb out. And
for sure.
With that, you're allowed to make some mistakes and then you recover from your mistakes. And that's one of the things that I've been really loving about XC paragliding lately, is just like that battle of staying in the air, where you can't really have those battles in wingsuit base jumping.
Yeah, and you don't have the time for it either. XC paragliding, you might be riding under a cloud and it's happy days. You're thinking about a bill you haven't paid, or like looking at some lake and dogs playing in the park. You're like totally zoned out, just living life in the moment. And then you're like, oh, cool, shit, I'm bombing out. I need to cross this valley, and you're back into it. Whereas, on a wingsuit base jump, it's full on from the moment you start till the ending when you're on the ground. So
yeah, there's no thinking about bills or anything else. It's you're locked in. Yeah.
For sure. Super overstimulating as well. So
yeah, it's a lot of stimulation for sure. we talked a little bit about flying cardboard. I'm wondering if you have a strong opinion about the difference between stunts and sport.
Yeah, you know what? When you sent that question over the other day, I was thinking about that a lot. I think a stunt is more defined as something that you know has more risk associated with it, but you're preparing for those specific risks ahead of time a little bit more. Whereas a sport, you know the risks, you know the training, you know what you're doing, and it's pretty routine. Whereas a stunt's like, okay, this is different. What could go wrong? You're thinking about the intricacies a bit more. And then with that different risk profile, with the different, I haven't done this before. This is the first time I'm doing this. Here's what can go wrong, whatnot. Then assuming you have a successful time doing it, if it's at that higher risk profile, it's not doing it so many more times. It's like, okay, cool, this is a one and done, or like, I'll do this every now and then, but this isn't your everyday jumping. So that's what I would think of a stunt more so. Something different that you think about a bit more in detail and then you don't do as often. So whereas a sport's more of a routine thing. So
yeah, that's a good definition. Stunts usually require like a breaking down of each individual step.
For sure.
Trying to separate those two, refining those independently, and then bringing them all together for one global stunt.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Do you like doing stunts?
I like being creative and trying new things if it seems like a good idea. And I have a lot of ideas and things I want to do, and a lot of them I haven't done because I think it's stupid. And it's like, okay, that's a nice idea. It's fun to talk about at the bar, but I don't actually want to go do that. But yeah, I like changing it up, and I think it keeps you fresh in a way if you're doing things with a higher risk profile. Or we had a name for it in Moab back in the day. It was like unsustainable base jumping. Like, okay, this is not something we're going to do every day, but I think we can do it in a tolerable way right now, at least once or twice. It keeps the rest of jumping fresh. So, and you're able to blend different experiences into those stunts. For example, back, I don't know, maybe 5 years ago in Moab, I had the idea to run off the cliff just holding onto the risers of a speed wing. So basically a cliff launch, no speed flying harness, just a base rig holding onto the risers. And I thought through it, I had the right gear. And it was definitely a stunt, but it was like, okay, cool. Like this is blending a few different things, like cliff launch technique, weight shift flying with, a speed wing. Like, oh, cool. How do I turn it if I want to turn it? Like, how's the launch going to work? Keep using my arms to keep the wing loaded, using the right gear, a wing that doesn't shoot so hard. And then, all the stuff from base jumping as well, cool. Like I need to be this high at this point. This is the gear setup I want, so on. Like you're able to blend different sports, and that's a fun element for me.
Nice.
Especially doing the multi-sport. So
where did you do that? Mary's Gash out over Mineral Bottom?
Yeah, the first one was at Mary's Gash, and I think I did it twice there. And then I also did one from Perry up Mesa.
Okay, wow, what a cool spot.
Which got a bit sporty. There was like a solid 30 seconds in like a no pole zone. I was like, oh boy, like this just got super sporty. I'm ready to just like land this and break my legs, no flare, but got over a ridge I was like, okay, we have enough clearance, and let go, pitch immediately. All was good. But yeah, I was like, oh, maybe this isn't the everyday thing. So got a little hectic there.
Yeah, that does sound spicy. How was holding on to the risers?
Really cool, man. It's like the childhood dream of flying, like taking the trash bag out and jumping off the balcony. Like that's what you think of. You're like, cool, I'm just running, holding these risers, and then, oh, wow, we're off a cliff, we're flying. Like, oh, I pull down on my left arm, we turn left. This is crazy. Like, this is pretty fun.
Did it shoot pretty hard right after the exit, or did you have it trimmed flat?
So I was using a Bullet. It's an older Ozone speed wing that has just two risers, similar to skydiving. So the risers meet in like a U. So I held the risers in a way where for like the takeoff, I could kind of rotate my hands forward and get more like A's, like front risers to pull up the wing, and then it would even out. And it was just like two nice loops to hold on to. So yeah, it worked out. It was super easy. Yeah, just like hanging on a pull up. So yeah, that's pretty funny.
That's cool.
That was good.
We were talking about stunts, and someone recently brought this up to me, saying that that the community, I'm putting community in quotes because it's such a wide group of people that are participating in a similar activity, and that's really what our community is represented as, I would think, widely, that we have like an unbalanced admiration for stunts or kind of unsustainable jumping. How do you feel about that?
I think it's the motivation behind it. Well, the first thing I thought of when you were saying that is like seeing stuff on Instagram, right? Like there's a lot of things that people do now just for video versus like what they actually want to do. And that's where I think it gets tricky. Unfortunately, there's a bigger population of jumpers out there, and sadly they're mainly doing it for the video, I think. I've ran into people who have walked away from an exit because they didn't have their camera with them. I'm like, this is ridiculous, man. Like, it's a sunset jump, like with all your friends, and you don't want to jump because you don't have your camera. Like, come on, man.
Wow.
Yeah. You're like, okay, like you do you. So I think, especially after that experience, it's like, all right, there's definitely people who only do it for the video. That's not a myth. Like, this is a for sure thing, and stunts do well on social media. If you show something that's never been done or looks crazy from the outside, people like it. And with that attention, people want to do things more and more. And then I think you get that unsustainable approach, people with probably not enough skill to be doing what they're doing at the frequency they're doing it at. So yeah, I think it's not an everyday thing. You don't want to be doing stunts every day. And you also want to do stunts that you can stick, and you've trained and kind of measured all the variables to the best of your ability. So
I feel like we can't really have this conversation without talking about Anthony. He was, it appeared to be doing stunts on almost every jump. You can correct me if I'm wrong here on that. Do you think that, without being too critical, do you feel like his approach to the sport was for the video, or did he do it for the sensations it brought? Was it a combination of the two?
You know what? People change over time. I can't tell you why he got into base jumping, like how much that played a role in it. I've known him for 2.5 years or so. And, like all base jumpers, like, if we can make a nice video, awesome, let's do it. And he did well on social media, but I can say for the time that I've known him, especially in recent times, like it was definitely the last of priorities. It was mainly having fun. And for him, he really enjoyed pushing his own limits, challenging himself, and then, being pretty full on. And that wasn't for me all the time, but definitely it's fun. It's fun to be going full on, especially if you have the skills and the talent, and he had them more than anybody. But the problem with that is when you're at that high threshold of jumping and being pretty full on all the time, it does take one little mistake to have a problem. And that's exactly what happened. So, yeah.
I'm happy to hear that. I'm happy to hear that. I don't know. I feel like it's almost less tragic, that if your motivation is for attention through video, that I feel like it's just less valuable in a way.
Yeah.
So I'm happy to hear that. I'm asking you because it seems like you guys have been spending quite a lot of time together recently. So, and just wanted to get some perspective on that.
Yeah.
And,
the man had more motivation than anyone I've met in base jumping, like just a full on machine. Like I couldn't keep up for the most part. I was like, oh man, this is wild in a good way. I trusted him fully, and I think he trusted me fully, which I don't, it's less than on one hand that of jumpers in the world that I can think that about, where I trust them fully. I'm like, oh yeah, you got this. I don't need to say anything to you about anything on the jump, decision making in general. Like, trusted him fully. But yeah, the guy was fired up. Like a memorable jump recently, talking about Anthony and Pablo. Let's see, back middle of December, I was in Lauterbrunnen. My car was broken there, so I was kind of stuck for a minute. But I was flying out to India in the evening for like an acro competition. The flight was I had to leave Lauterbrunnen at like 8 p.m. This is in December, so the sun sets early. And with the new cable car, Pablo and Anthony were trying to set the record for the most jumps in the valley in one day with one rig packed by themselves. And it was a full-on effort. They were doing like 2+ jumps an hour, packing in the snow, going on. And the last few jumps were in the dark off high ultimate. And I was heading out, at 8 o'clock. So I watched one of the jumps, or the second to last jump, them land and cheering them on. And I was like, I'll go with you guys on the last one. And we went up high ultimate. It was a full moon that night. Their second to last jump in the night. It was full moon, no cloud. You could see everything. It was really pretty. And I was like, yeah, can you guys see stuff? Is it good visuals? Like, you have reference? They're like, yeah, easy, no problem. I was like, cool. We get up and it's full cloud. Like, can't see the moon. Pitch dark. It's like, oh man, this is you guys' 20th jump. Oh, I guess
20th jump.
20th jump in a day.
Damn.
It's like, well, I guess we're doing a 3-way slick. And it's like, that was one of those full-on experiences, but I trusted them. Like, Pablo's going right, Anthony's going straight, I'm going left. We've done this jump hundreds of times. It's like, cool. Like, we know what to do. We can see enough to be safe. And yeah, that was a special experience and a testament to the motivation. I don't think he made any posts about doing 20 jumps in a day, and that's packing in the snow, being cold, running to the exit, just like full of fire. And you won't see that on any videos. So yeah, pretty wild.
Was that influenced or helped by substances, or was that just pure adrenaline and excitement?
Oh, no. Man, no, not at all. No substances. Those guys are nuts. I don't know if it's the French vibe or what. They're a different breed though. But
absolutely,
yeah, they don't drink, they don't smoke. They're just on fire all the time. Just
20 is so many.
It's crazy.
The most I've ever done was 9 at Brevant, and that was a lot for me.
That's a lot of stimulation right there. Wow. Yeah. And 20 was just that's where they were getting started. They were talking about, let's just go until we can't, we'll jump for 3 days straight, through the night, through the day. I'm like, that might be a bit much. He's like, yeah, when we get tired, we'll put on the 2-piece. I'm like, man, I'll watch, I'll make you guys hot chocolate and tea in the parking lot. I'll count for you. So
you were saying earlier that it wasn't for you and you couldn't always follow along for what he or they were doing. Mm-hmm. Did you struggle with that at all? Or did you feel like, tell me, did you?
I didn't personally. But I know what I want to do and what I don't want to do pretty clearly, I think. I can be swayed in either direction, depending on the person and with some thought, but I knew that it's not a competition for me. I'm not trying to, do rope swing, double gainers and a wingsuit. Like, that's all you, man. I'll take down the rope for you.
You win.
Like, I'll watch you. I trust you. I'll be along for the ride. And that's only because I trusted him. Anyone else, I'd be like, this is going to go poorly. I don't want to be here. But I felt like I was an asset where he could bounce things off me and vice versa. And, we both have similar experiences. And skills, but he was more willing to exercise on those on a daily basis. And I like keeping it pretty chill. I want to enjoy my jumps and not be stressed out. So
yeah, stress.
He was able to push this away very well. But for me, I'd be very stressed and peaked most of the time if I was trying to play catch up. So
I kind of, I've brought this topic up a couple of times, but I'm wondering if we can go over it. Is what is a good base jumper?
Yeah, that's changed for me over the years. I think at first, when I started base, it was like, I have all these heroes, on the internet, and then eventually in person. Now some of my closest friends. Like, I want to be able to do that, or like have this skill set to, grab your toggles this quick and like do these turns, these maneuvers and all these things. So at first I think it was like the ability of base jumping. And then over time it's shifted into more of being able to make good decisions consistently and have a good read of everything that's involved with base jumping, mentality, weather, gear, the exit, who you're with. The list goes on, all the little factors, sub factors in base. And at the end of the day, being able to do it for a long time. So that's what I want to do. I don't want to die base jumping. I want to do it for a long time. So I think being able to do all those things well, the sub factors that I just mentioned, sets you up for that being able to do it for a long time. So,
Yeah, I agree with that. As long as you're having fun.
and that's it for me. Like, yeah, I only want to do jumps if they're fun now. You know, it wasn't always that way. I was happy with jumping in slightly shitty winds in the city, and I was like, oh, cool, one more jump. Like, this will be good. And then you're getting tossed around, like dodging lampposts, spraining an ankle. You're like, nothing about that was fun. Like, why are we doing this? And now it's like, if it's even like slightly, like I think I'm going to have more stress than fun, it's not worth it for me. And I'm totally happy riding a cable car down, hiking down, grabbing a coffee, whatever, or just sitting out a full day. So.
Yeah, I think that's what's probably the most interesting thing for me about base jumping, and I am exclusively wingsuit base jumping now, is that the color and excitement that it brings to your life is just unparalleled. And you want to introduce that excitement. You want to have that amazing feeling. You want to be in the mountains, and it helps everything in your life just to feel add perspective, beauty, and excitement, right? But too much of it, things become a little bit unbalanced, and way too much means it's all over. So finding that little position on that scale of input that you're getting from the sport is really the game itself for me.
For sure. And especially cruising back to the fun comment real quick, with something that is so dangerous, the only justification for me is like, you have to be having maximum fun if you're going to put yourself in this much risk in this zone. So yeah, one more answer to that. But yeah, I think there's a happy medium of doing it the right amount for currency and not being too hyper current and getting complacent. But yeah, also not for diluting life, where you're not able to pull out the rich experiences and the little things because you're just so in it all the time. So.
When did you figure out that it was worth it?
I think right from the get-go, I realized how much I enjoyed it, and I didn't have a clear picture of the risk at the time, but it was very obvious how much it added to my life. It was very clear. I was like, okay, I'm going to stay on this path. And I think that's just continued over the years. And, sometimes that changes, if there's a fatality or when you get to the bottom of those waves, it's a little bit less clear sometimes. And I've kept an open mind about it always. I'm not forcing myself to I have to keep base jumping. It's like, oh, I could quit anytime I want. But as long as it's something I want to do, I'll keep doing it. I've always had that pull back to it, regardless of, those dark days. So I think that's, it's been clear from the beginning that this is what I'm meant for. I want to keep doing this. I love it. So
let's talk about some of the things that have tried your conviction about the risk. You've had a pretty serious accident, if I understand correctly.
Yeah. Yes and no. Like a very serious experience. It could have been very serious, and somehow it wasn't. I don't think a lot of people know this, but yeah, basically, I'll run it back. 6-something years ago. Earlier, I've been base jumping for just over 8 years, I believe, or 8.5 years or so. But yeah, 6.5 years ago, I was jumping all the time. Doing 300 plus jumps a year in Colorado in the States, which if you know Colorado jumping, that's really hard to do. It's a lot of jumping, but I was running around having the time of my life, but also super current and super complacent. I would drive down to the city at night with 5 rigs in the car in the middle of winter, and I would come back at 4 or 5 in the morning with them all unpacked, pack them up, do it again the next day. So yeah, just turning out loads. But basically, I was jumping a 180-foot building in Denver, and it was jump 4 or 5 of the night. Just no thought to it, no emotion, no fear, no overexcitement. Just oh, cool, just another one. But yeah, 180-foot building. I set up a static line anchor kind of behind me and above me on the side a little bit. And at the time, I was doing static lines while I would put the pilot chute between my legs, like laying on the edge of the building or whatever I was jumping. I wouldn't hold it in my hand. And it was a little bit of headwind, and yeah, it's a crazy thinking back on it. A little bit of headwind, so I was like, cool, I need to push extra hard. I had a 42-inch pilot chute, a clapped out canopy, a Velcro container. I pushed super hard, and next thing I know, I'm on my back with the bridle between my legs, or under my arm. So my foot caught on the anchor when I exited, and it broke the brake cord. Then I'm in free fall on my back, 180-foot building, bridle wrap, 42-inch pilot chute. And yeah, there's just no thinking. You like spin over, or I kind of flipped over, swam out of it. I'm head down looking at the street, like full ground rush, no parachute. And it's crazy. It's one of those situations like, you're going to die, which I don't think a lot of people have been in. There's like, oh, I almost died. A car runs a red light, almost hits you. Like, ooh, that was close. That was scary. But this was like, oh, 100% sure. Going in for sure. Like, oh, I love my family. Like, one of these. Next thing I know, I'm laying on the street looking up at the building. I'm like, what the heck? What happened? Like, canopies on a car. But yeah, I didn't see risers or toggles or anything. I was like, head down at the street, canopy opened right as a scorpion hit on my back. And yeah, it's crazy. I was able to crawl to my car, kind of collect my gear, drove a few blocks to a friend's house, just barged in the door, took off my pants, like, oh, is there anything sticking out? I can't really walk, or I think I broke my hip. And she was like, yeah, you're good. I was like, what the fuck? Drove straight to the hospital, got an x-ray. They're like, you're good. I'm like, what? Like, I should be broken for sure. Couldn't really walk for a week. And then, I was good after that. But from that moment, I was like, oh, I quit base jumping. I'm done. And I won't start until I feel like I have to. And it was like 1.5 weeks later, I was like, oh, I got to go base jumping, and was back at it. So that was a pretty defining experience for sure.
Man, I'm watching you just go through the whole range of emotions right now. It's what a story, crazy. What an experience.
Yeah, I don't think I've told it all that many times. But yeah, it was like complacency at its finest. I didn't have a helmet, didn't really think about it. Just set up an anchor and go. And it's one of those defining moments for sure. For me, it was the confirmation that no, I don't want to die base jumping. When people say like, oh, they died doing what they love, like, I think it's total bullshit. It's like, no, it's like they didn't. Like, you want to die on a rocking chair, 1-year-old, like, not doing this. So
yeah,
that was the moment for me. I was like, nothing's worth doing that. So
I'm wondering, because you said that you sort of woke up on the ground in a way. I mean, you didn't lose consciousness, but you don't know exactly what happened. So what do you think went on? Was it so intense of a sensation moment that you think your brain just sort of protected you? And
no, it was actually, now that let's see. No, it was actually kind of a very, like, everything slows down. You're quite clear in your thought. You're like, oh, I'm definitely dead. Like, oh, I love my family. There's nothing more to it, And then, it's like it was the most intense, crazy ground rush you can imagine, obviously.
Yeah.
But I didn't see any canopy or anything. And the next thing, like, if you dropped a rock off the exit, that's where I impacted on the ground. And canopy was just everywhere. I was like, what the heck? And like, am I dead? I don't know. And
wow.
Yeah. So I think there's 2 jumpers I can think of who have had similar experiences. I won't name them. There's a video of one guy on a building having something similar, and then another in the UK with a guy on a handheld jump throwing the pilot chute down. And it was a similar situation where a canopy was just milliseconds before you hit the ground and slows you down enough to not die. So pretty intense. So I got back to it kind of like nothing changed in terms of like the, getting back to the frequency and whatnot of jumping, but definitely an obvious shift in mindset. And then also there was the technique learning there. Since then, I always hold my pilot chute for static lines, do, triple, quadruple checks on the routing, everything for all sorts of jumps. But really making sure there's nothing next to your legs, nothing, visualizing. But when you get to an exit, a new jump you're opening or one that's been done a lot, like, cool, what does the deployment process look like? with where you're standing, when you push, where your feet are going to be, where a rope is going to be, where your bridle, all of this. So really thinking about that a lot more. And trying to educate people too. You know, when I see someone jumping with a pilot chute between their legs next to their foot, they push hard and you're like, oh, that brushed your foot. That could have been really bad, you know. So trying to educate and show people a better way to do it. And so now I advocate that everyone does it, you know, holding your pilot chute and the anchor, just keeping it fully away from you. So
this is a bit of a tangent, but we were talking about you and not seeing the canopy open. And I wonder how many people out there, well, I guess I could add a little bit of reference here. I know someone who recently said that they've quit for good because every time they were exiting in a wingsuit, they blacked out and they would sort of come to flying.
Interesting.
And I was like, whoa, dude, like that's not a good thing.
Yeah. I think quitting's a good.
Yeah, that's probably, it's a good idea. You take a step back at least and reassess what's going on here, because you kind of need to have all your faculties about you.
Yeah.
And I've witnessed a fatality where I'm fairly confident that they were they were so overstimulated that they probably didn't have full vision. Like they were very tunnel visioned.
Yeah.
And I wonder if that plays into the fact that people really love their video too, is that they're not able to be completely aware of their situation or their jump, and so that they rely on the video. I mean, this is totally theoretical, but I wonder, it's like, you know, some people, like perhaps the guy that you're talking, or girl that you're talking about, was like, I don't jump without my camera, because they're so pinned out that they don't even really like remember their jumps.
Yeah, I mean, maybe some people. I've been asked a lot. I've asked a lot of people why they choose to use a camera and whatnot, and I've never heard that answer come up. So I have doubt in it, and especially for the situation we talked about where I saw someone not jump because of the camera. I know it was for sure not because of that reason. But I can see that, like, even now, that's part of the reason why, like, I wear a camera mainly for being able to go back and look at the jump and kind of debrief things and see what happened. And, you know, when you are in kind of the heat of the moment, you're not looking at everything that's going on, but later on you'd want to see, you know, it's not because you're blacking out or tunnel vision, but because you can't see the full picture because you're so focused. So the camera helps you see other elements, for sure.
I always wear a 360 camera that can see my deployment, because I want to look at my deployment on every jump.
For sure.
To keep a track of what's going on back there.
Yeah,
it's too important.
Yeah, I think, like, the best example for, like if you have an off heading, how you're fixing it, what your hands are actually doing. Like there's the reaction, and in the moment you're just doing, you're not thinking about, or like you're not being super precise. You're just reacting to the situation based on your training. So the camera can break that down, and then you can be like, oh, I actually should have done this here, not this. And that can be a good learning tool, I think. Seeing the bigger picture, at least. So,
how do you see slider up versus slider down in terms of mentality about training, the approach to training, the risk, the danger? Do you compartmentalize those two as in two different disciplines? I mean, because there's even talk about people like, can we have a list that's just for wingsuiting?
Yeah. I mean, it's all base jumping. You're jumping off a fixed object. So I think it's the same thing at the end of the day, or same sport, same BFL. One of my favorite quotes that I always tell people, and that stuck with me, is from Lewis Jones, who's mainly a slider down jumper. But it's really easy to get severely hurt with slider down, slider off jumping, and really hard to die. And then with slider up, it's really easy to die, really hard to get hurt. And that's the truth of the matter. You know, I see a lot of people now in the Euro world. They look at Moab jumping like, that's crazy, opening up so close to the rocks and XYZ. And yeah, it's true. Like if you hit a rock, you're gonna get fucked up, but you're probably not gonna die. You'll be all right if you make good decisions. But slider up, like, you know, you hit a tree, hit a rock with a wingsuit. There's no getting hurt there, you know. So it's hard to argue one as more dangerous than the other. Wingsuits have more fatalities than slider off jumping, or more fatalities in slider up world than slider off, for sure. So I think that's a statistic at the end of the day. But that's how I like to think of it. You need to make really good decisions before the jump for slider up. And then for slider off, you need to make really good decisions during the jump, like your reaction time and stuff. So,
yeah, I agree with that. I agree with a couple of those things. When I first moved to France, I had just left Moab, where I had been there for a year, and we were jumping this place near Grenoble called Saint-Énard, and this was sort of like the test piece for low cliff wingsuit jumping. And man, I thought what they were doing was bonkers, and this was like the first time I had experienced people lasering a cliff and things like that. Yeah. And Ellen and I were like slider off jumping that thing all the time, and they were like, "Wow, you're fucking crazy!" Like what, And it was like, "What do you mean? This is way safer." And I don't want to compare what's safer, what's not with that, but it was just like the comfort level that I had was like way higher jumping slider off there than a wingsuit for sure.
And that's it. At the end of the day, it's your comfort level. Whatever you're more fresh with, have more experience with, it's going to feel better usually. You take Euro Lauterbrunnen jumpers, bring them up, they'll be pooping their pants. And then if you bring Moab jumpers to out here, they'll be pooping their pants. So it's the same world. It's just what you're used to. So, but I think at the end of the day, if I hate to use the word you're safer with anything in base jumping, but if you follow good practice, you have a better chance of living with slider off jumping, I'd like to say. So statistically for sure.
Yeah. So what are your thoughts as an American who's now, can we say, living in Europe, or you're here?
Spend most of my time here.
Okay.
Sure.
So how do you see the difference between people that may live here and then people that come here for vacation or for an extended base trip?
It's kind of with any, it's the same as if you're vacationing or traveling anywhere. When you're at home, you're relaxed. There's not a rush for really anything. You can do something tomorrow. When you're on, a vacation, you have a limited timeline. You want to get as much done as possible. You've spent a lot of money and a lot of effort to be there. And with base jumping, it's even more so, because these places are spots that, give people the most purpose in their life and the most excitement and happiness. And they've also dreamed about them for years. So yeah, when you have somebody visiting somewhere for a short period of time, they're going to try to get as much in as they can. And I don't blame anyone for that. But when it's with a discipline that they don't have really any prior experience with, if you have 1,000 base jumps in Moab and you come to Lauterbrunnen or Brenta, that's a whole new world for you. And frankly, that 1,000 jumps, you have to reset a bit, and you have to spend the same time you spent in Moab learning things. You have to spend it out here, and it's impossible to do in a week or a month. At least it's impossible to do at the level you should exhibit with such an activity, in my opinion. So people come and they go hard, and they're fired up, and they're in a new place as well. I think when you're in a spot that's a bit foreign, it feels like you're a little bit untouchable. You're like, oh, like this rock here won't kill me the same as the one I see every day in Moab. In a way, I think, as ridiculous as it sounds, people have this mentality. They're like, oh, cool, like it's a big cliff, like I'm good, But the same risk, same consequences happen here as they do anywhere else. So,
do you think that there's a limit of sacrifice that is necessary to operate at a certain level in slider up jumping? Meaning, like, if you want to do certain things, that you have to sacrifice that professional career that you have to be in the Alps more often, to choose the relationships that you're in. For me, when I started, I knew that this wasn't something that I could do on vacation only. It's something that I needed to live year round. Yeah. And it would just, like, that didn't even seem like a possibility. Not only did I want to do it all the time, but it was just like, oh, if I want to be actively wingsuit base jumping, I have to live this sport. Yeah. maybe I'm putting the answer into your mouth here, but
I'm right there with you.
Yeah, how do you feel about that? Have you in your own life seen like, oh man, I've made some sacrifices. Like I'm completely living this because this is what is required.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. Like if you want to do things that require, top level of skill and ability, you have to train for it as well. You can't just go and wing it. And to be able to train for that, you have to put in the hours, the jumps, the time, and you can't do that 1 week out here per year, 1 month out here per year. And that's what brought me out here. When I kind of moved out here, I had never been to Europe before. I always wanted to, but I got invited on the Europe trips and stuff, and I said no because I wanted to save money and focus on working in the States to save up to be able to be here full time. And I also knew there was so much here that I wanted to do, and it would be impossible to do on a month trip. And I didn't want that rush, that pressure as well, to be like, oh, let's see what I can do here in a week. I don't know. I've been here 2.5 years for the most part in Europe, and I still feel like I'm not ready for a lot of the things that people come and do their first, let's call it season, their first 2 weeks in Europe that they've ever been. They go do things and I'm like, well, I'm not ready for that for a while, and you guys are doing this week 1. Like that's pretty full on. I don't know if it's ignorance or if they have more confidence and I'm just more held back on certain things, but yeah, I think you have to live it if you want to get good at something and do it in a sustainable manner. You got to fully invest yourself. And I think there's no excuse for that when you have such a dangerous activity like base jumping that you're performing. So, saying like, oh, well, work won't let me off, so I'm just going to move my trip to 1 week and I'm still going to do these super short start jumps. It's such a stupid excuse to risk your life without the proper preparation, in my opinion. So.
Yeah, I mean, like as for you, as somebody is a multi-sports athlete, like in every other sport, let's say acro paragliding, for example, like you have the full stall, the parachutal, then going to helicopters, and then going to Misties, and then sat, and there's a very clear progression. You may bounce around a little bit, but you're not going to come, you're not going to buy your Emily and send it off of a hill and then expect to do an infinite tumble on your first week. And what kind of allows that to not happen is that you just can't do it. Yeah. And so like the barrier for entry in wingsuit base jumping particularly it's just non-existent. Like anybody, like a child, can jump off of a
put on your aura and you step off the cliff and
there you go. It goes. Send it.
I think it's and that's the thing, it's the hardest in the wingsuit world. 2-piece tracking is hard, slick tracking is hard. It's very measurable. It's like, oh, how far did you go? Did you pass those trees? Did you pass that road? Did you pass that river? Cool. This is how good you're doing. This is how your start was. You're holding speed. Awesome. In a wingsuit, everything kind of looks the same in a way. It's not all that hard to fly in a 3-meter gap. I don't do that, and I haven't done that, but I've done it in the sky. It's not that hard. The problem with I think specifically Americans coming to Europe is they have that compressed timeline, but they have more skydiving skills and more repetition and time in a wingsuit than anyone else in the world. Like the skydiving culture in America is insane. People are jumping all the time, doing thousands of jumps a year. They're really, really good. And they think that automatically applies to base jumping. But the only way to get better at base jumping is by base jumping. You can't rely on your sky skills, and they find themselves in a corner that can be really hard to get out of very quickly. So
yeah, one of the differences that really stands out for me between big mountain wingsuit base jumping and skydiving is the sense of depth perception.
For sure.
And I remember one of my first heli jumps. Actually, you know what? It was out of a plane with Matt Gertis. There was a drop zone here in Switzerland that would allow us to jump with single parachute systems, and it was it was so fun. And they drop us out, and I remember following Matt for the first time, and he did like this big corkscrew, connected right to the terrain, and handled it like a total boss. Yeah. And I was just like,
what did I just see?
Yeah, what did I just see? And I am not going to follow that,
Yeah.
you know, and like the amount of space that I had to bleed, and I just didn't have that skill. And so like I did some zigzags and like, you know, found him at the landing area. And he was like, dude, where have you been? all nervous, you know, obviously.
Man, I was way up there.
Yeah, So I guess what I'm trying to get at is that while I had been skydiving a lot prior to that jump, it didn't prepare me for that sense of depth perception and how to connect to the terrain, and you know, just how much speed I needed to clear things, and it just doesn't equate.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, all the things, depth perception, the visuals, the techniques in base, you know, pushing, you know, dead air starts, dealing with instability in that part of the jump, energy management, meteorology. You know, you're not going to get rocked by a thermal at 7,000 feet on a formation skydive jump. Like it's not gonna flip you over in your suit if you're jumping in bad conditions. And it's stuff you have to learn from spending a lot of time in the mountains. And that carries over into multi-sport stuff. I think the more time you can spend in that terrain, whether it's on a paraglider or, you know, feeling energy management with a speed wing where you have way more range and everything's slowed down from a wingsuit, that's super good, you know, cross training and learning, and just more time in the air to really feel what's going on and what the terrain has to offer and how you need to navigate it. So
yeah, just understanding a south facing aspect at 12 o'clock in the middle of the summer is going to feel a whole lot different than a north face in the winter.
100%.
The air is just a completely different medium.
Yeah. And you see so many people, like we were talking about, with, you know, when they come for a week, they get caught out on that. You know, they're jumping the technical jumps midday and in bad conditions or whatever it may be. It's very clear that people don't know what's going on, and all the local jumpers are done with their stuff, and they're not jumping that day. And you have your 7 days, and you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah. So. It feels like there's so much information out there now, though. Like there's no real excuse.
Yeah, but if people, there is no excuse. I agree. But if people are gonna make the excuses for the bigger excuses, they're not gonna spend the time to learn what they really need to learn. I think that people that you see exposing themselves to situations with more risk and not sufficient training, they haven't put in the time to learn that stuff. So
yeah, man, did you because I know you've been fairly active or very active at very popular sites. Did you witness any fatalities this year? Or
man, there's so many, so it's like
this is a rough year, man.
It's a shitstorm all the time. It's crazy. 3 days ago, we're cleaning out a buddy's van who went in the parking lot, you know, in Steckelberg, and then, you know, it's under high ultimate. People are jumping. I see a guy jumping, a guy I know, 2-piece, and he's jumping older gear, and he deploys like medium low pull, has a left 90, and as it's like a long snivel, you see a line over form. It's white lines and a black canopy, just the lines creep over, locks in, and he's at, you know, 150 feet, starts going into a spiral, does nothing to correct it, and he impacts in the parking lot 100 feet from us while we're cleaning out our dead friend's van. It's like, oh my gosh, did I just see that? Run over to him. He's not breathing. He's unconscious. You're like, what? Like, this is crazy, man. Call rescue. You know, we kind of stabilize him. Some breaths come back and load him on the helicopter. And it's like, all right, another day. Like, this sport is wild. That was 3 days ago, you know?
Wow.
So, yeah, crazy stuff.
Yeah, I saw a message from the SBA saying, hey, pull over a certain location because we just had a crash in between two cars. And I guess that's what they were talking about.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's
sorry, that took me off guard.
Another day of base jumping, right?
Let's walk that back for a second.
Yeah.
So you're standing in Steckelberg parking lot.
Yep.
Cleaning out Anthony's van, I'm assuming.
Yep. Yeah.
And you look up and you hear a deployment, and they're sniveling, and as it's sniveling, there's a line over. Slider up, line over.
Yeah, it doesn't happen
the mythical line over.
Yeah. So a little background without given too many details of the person and whatnot. It's a rather old school jumper who jumps older gear with the tracking suit as well. He wasn't making it awfully far. That's why he was deploying over the parking lot. But yeah, deployed, had a really long snivel with older gear, and yeah, a line over was the left side of the canopy, the brake line, cascade and all just kind of creeped over during the snivel. And I'd never actually seen the line over in person. It was pretty well. I was like, is that what's happening? Oh my gosh. Yep. Cool. It's like fully locked in. The full left side of the canopy is just closed off. Super aggressive spiral to the left. And yeah, he didn't do anything to correct it. He was screaming and kind of panicking, but no outside brake to stop a turn. And yeah, just impacts in the parking lot, like straight down the line of cars. We're like, and it takes a second in your head. You're like, what? Did that really just happen? But then I'm there, and, you know, I know the guy. We've shared beers, you know, hanging out. Like, I know the guy, and it's like, well, just can't stand here and do nothing. So I run over to him. I'm the first one to him, and yeah, laying on the ground, pretty mangled. His face is covered in blood, helmet on, like legs are pointing different directions, and not breathing, unconscious. I'm like, okay, I'm not a medical professional here, but all right, like airway stuff, you know, take his helmet off, get his jacket open, kind of prop his head up, and some shallow breaths came back while he was still unconscious. We had the helicopter on the phone. There's paragliders behind me, like panicking, like freaking out, and just like, we just need to sort this one out or try our best. And yeah, luckily by the time we were put him on the helicopter, he was semi-conscious. You know, he shot up with a bunch of drugs, but he's breathing. He had a very bad fracture on at least his right leg. I don't know. I heard that he was in the hospital and doing all right. So.
Well, that's good news.
Yeah, crazy. Just another day in the valley. And then, yeah, right after this, the helicopter leaves. I go back to my van, or my buddy's van, and I'm talking with Pablo. We're like, crazy, man. Like, what are we doing, you know? And then we watch another guy jump, and a line over starts to form. Like, you see the slider, and I'm like, and it kind of like sticks for a second and then clears. We're like, what is happening, man? We can't look at any people jumping. Like, we're a curse or something. So we finished the day, and it was okay, but...
Yeah, that valley, it can be a paradise and a hellhole all in one.
Yeah, it sees a very high frequency of base jumps, and with high frequency comes more chance for things to happen. So, yeah,
well, man, if the guy who crashed is listening to this, we wish you the best, and hope you have a healthy, happy recovery.
Yeah, he's a cool dude.
That's scary. I'm wondering, did you check the top skin of the second jumper? Did you see any line burn on the top of?
I didn't even bother to like.
It was a
you
had enough
deployment. I was
okay.
Like, yeah. Like, we were just laughing about it. We're like, it's situations like that. Like, the only way to kind of get through it is laugh about it. You're like, what? Like, this is insane, man. Like, craziness.
Wow.
Yeah. I kind of wish, in a bad way, I kind of wish more people had more exposure to that sort of thing, because I think it would drastically change their decision making and opinions once you see enough. So
yeah, I mean, base jumping can feel amazingly safe and comfortable and smooth until it doesn't.
Oh, for sure.
And if it doesn't for a while, you just get this weird sense of compliance and complacency. Like you said, it's like everything's fine, this is smooth, and then boom, you kind of have to need one of those close calls or even an accident to kind of like be like, I got to be on point when this parachute opens, or I make these decisions, because I got to be ready.
Yeah, it's base jumping. It's not a walk in the park, you know. Every jump is full on, and every jump you have to approach as a full new experience. So yeah.
How did you learn how to base jump? Did you go through a school? Did you have a mentor?
Yes. So I learned through a mentor. You want the cliff notes or the full story?
Give me the good stuff.
Good story. So kind of my background to exposure with air sports and base jumping, starting from when I was a kid. When I was a baby, my dad would take me to the airport. We'd watch skydivers. I still have those little like picture memories in my head of being at the airport, seeing that. And my mom would take me on top of parking garages and watch construction cranes. I was super fascinated, like little kid with construction stuff. So we put like the basket of cookies on the crane hook, and so I was
my kids love cranes.
And, looking at cranes. So I think they had a little part in this. But where I grew up in Boulder, Colorado, our house was close to a paragliding landing area. So I always saw paragliders from when I was a kid, and I was super into flying kites. My first kind of air love was landboarding. So kind of like kite surfing, but with a off-road skateboard essentially. So I was flying kites and doing this all the time in the park. And I always wanted to do a skydive and get into paragliding. And on my 18th birthday, my parents gifted me a skydive. So I did a tandem skydive. I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. But it wasn't until a few months later, I was actually in San Francisco. I was doing photo and video stuff for work. And I was on a tour with like a DJ duo in San Francisco. And one of the guys that popped up on my, like, you know, after the skydive, I like stalked my instructor on Instagram. I was like, this guy's cool. Like, I want to see. And like, it shows suggested people. And two of the people who were instrumental into getting into base jumping popped up. I followed them. One was my mentor, and one was the first person I saw do a base jump. So in San Francisco, this guy hit me up because I posted a picture of like the city, and there's a super big crane in the photo. He was like, yeah, let's meet up. Let's go jump. I was like, what? This is crazy. And I was doing a lot of like urban exploring and rooftoping at the time. So I was like, cool. Met him at, you know, whatever time at night, meet him at his car. He pulls out a rig. I'd never seen a base jump. I was like, wow, this is crazy, man. Cool. We climbed this 82-story crane, hang out for a bit, and he jumps off. And right then I was like, that's what I need to be doing. Like, this is it. So got back to Colorado shortly after, signed up for the AFF course, crushed through the license. Mid-license, the guy who I saw do the space jump, he also speed flew at the time. I just wanted a parachute of any sort. I was like, oh, like, do you have any speed wings for sale? Like, this seems fun. So he sold me an old Bullet 14 with a harness for like $400.
That was my first wing too.
It's a great learner. It teaches you to run for sure. So I was crushing through my license, got this speed wing, didn't kite it at all. I didn't know what that was. Didn't ground handle it. I walked straight to the top of the hill at the paragliding launch, looked on YouTube how to hold how to clip in, how to hold the risers. It was like the worst way to learn possible. And somehow ended up flying and landing semi-successfully. And like sent him the video. He was like, oh my God, don't do that. You're going to kill yourself. But gave me some pointers and it got better from there. But yeah, so that was one of the people I had followed on Instagram after that tandem skydive. The other one who ended up being my mentor is this guy, Max Leziak. And at the time he was living in Belize, but he worked for the drop zone in Colorado near my home, Mile High Skydiving. So yeah, we started chatting. He was giving me tips, like encouraging me through the whole skydiving process. And he was coming back from Belize and needed a place to stay. And my goal was base jumping. That's all I cared about. And I knew he base jumped and was quite good at it. So I was like, hey man, so you need a place to stay. I think I could talk my mom into letting you stay in the extra bedroom for free, but you're going to have to teach me the base jump. And he was super reluctant. He was like, oh, this is a bad idea, not the way to do it. But he agreed to teach me if I demonstrated the necessary skills. So he got back. I landed in front of the target, like he said, 5 times in a row, all wing conditions, stand-up landings, did the canopy drills. And he was like, cool, we can go to the bridge. So I had maybe 50 skydives or so and about 100 speed flights. But went to the bridge. He taught me a jump. It was awesome. Everyone said that he was an idiot for doing it. I'm going to die. But then I think the first year of base jumping, we did almost 350 jumps together.
Damn.
And it just went like
Getting
full
after it.
crazy mode. Yeah. It was a time, but yeah.
So did your mom know that she was facilitating a room or your base mentor by supplying the room?
I don't think she expected that. I'm pretty good at like sales stuff. So
okay.
I sold it to her. I was like, yeah, I'll help out around the house. Good friend. He's going to like help teach me things. Like, hey, he'll be a good person to have around the house, you know? And
all right.
he was one of my best friends. So
awesome.
Super fortunate for that. But yeah, that's how I kind of got into base. And shortly after with the speed flying, also paragliding. And since then it's just been a full-time thing, just trying to do it as much as possible. So
without diving into your personal situation too much, how are you financing all of this? How are you able to make it happen?
So in the early days then, it was a super good situation. I was living with my parents. I didn't have any bills, and I drove delivery driving for like the food delivery apps at night. So I would work 6 to 8 hours at night, 8 o'clock, 7, 8 o'clock till 3, 4 in the morning every night, just delivering food, whipping around in my Subaru in town. And then during the day with a little bit of sleep, mostly just trying to be at the drop zone and skydive. And yeah, the drop zone had a nice little referral program. So if you referred someone for a tandem, you would get half a jump. So I'd sit out in the parking lot and talk to people like, hey, like if you're going in there, will you just say that I like sent you? And we got a few free jumps that way.
Nice.
But yeah, it was no bills on my end. I was 18, and yeah, just driving delivery food 60 hours a week or so.
That sounds like when I first came out, I got this job as a news producer working nights. That was like the entry level. And same thing, I would arrive at work at 11, get off at 6 or 7, I don't really remember. And I would drive directly to the Brevant or whatever it was that I wanted to jump that, and oftentimes I would do Brevant because I could have 3 rigs in the car, and sometimes 3 wingsuits, and I do 1, 2, 3, drink a beer, have a little bit of food, crash out and do it again.
Yeah. I mean, whatever you have to do to make it happen. And yeah, in the early days, I bought a very cheap rig. It was actually a baser container, if you're familiar with that. It's a TSO'd base rig. It has like big 3 rings, super. You don't want to hike it with a full weight Fox.
And you can put a round on the front of it, right?
Yeah, you can attach a reserve and take it out of a plane legally, which is pretty cool.
Okay.
But that's what I was rocking around with. I got that and a Fox, and absolutely destroyed that parachute. Like, put so many patches on it. Like, used it to the end of its life. Absolutely. And yeah, Max, who I was living with, he did tandems at the drop zone. So after a while of, doing the delivery driving, I was seeing how much money he was making. And I was like, oh, that's a much better way to do it. And you're getting to skydive. So invested the money in doing a lot of skydiving, spent a lot of time doing that, got a tandem rating. And then that just, was the next step in the ladder to, increasing the finances to increase the fun. So, yeah.
Were your folks supportive at first? What did they think?
Skydiving?
No, base jumping. Well, I guess I just want to throw it all together because I feel like parents at that time can't really distinguish the difference between.
I think for my mom, it was ignorance is bliss. She didn't really want to know about it, and she's like, "Oh, yeah, you do your thing. Don't tell me about it." My dad's a super smart guy. He knew what we were doing and the dangers around it, but super fortunate. He's always been super supportive of. I don't think any parents are supportive of base jumping specifically, but he's been very supportive of, as long as you're happy and enjoying your life, like, I support you and doing what you love. And that's been really good. And my mom's the same way. So been really fortunate to have parents that are so supportive of their kids pursuing the things they want. And also with my brother, he's a pilot, skydiver, he speed flies.
So it runs in the family.
Yeah, he got into it after. So yeah, they've been really great.
Yeah, that was the same. Before my dad passed, he loved hiking to exit points with us. He didn't like watching us jump off. Yeah, but he was a beast. So like he would be hiking way up in front, and we just trying to keep up with him. And then he'd be like, we get to the exit point and be like, all right, see you later, see you down at the bottom. And yeah those were some special moments. It's
a weird thing having your parents watch you base jump or be a part of that activity because it's not a normal thing. I think I don't know how you felt about it hiking with your folks, but
yeah, I mean, it felt natural with my dad. I haven't exposed my mom to it because I know it'll be hard for her, and it would be kind of a selfish thing to be like, "Hey, no, mom, come on, watch this." It would be for me, and I get enough out of it already, so I don't need to give her that kind of stress. Yeah,
it's a weird one. I think my mom's seen one base jump for me. I think my dad has seen one. But I've taken them both skydiving, which has been fun. So
nice.
That's been a good time.
Yeah, I mean, like even now too, I'll think about my mom if I'm posting a video.
Yeah.
She's gonna probably see this.
Would she be happy or not?
Yeah. Is this gonna stress her out?
Yeah. For sure.
So your parents are really supportive. You're living with your mentor. You're tandem skydiving, banging out ridiculous amounts of jumps. Did you get in-depth knowledge for your gear? Because I think that's something that's kind of been a shift over the last, I don't know, 10 years or so, where like when I started, and I'm not saying like I'm the most gear savvy person out there, but it was really important to kind of understand the material that you have, and
sure.
It doesn't seem to be the case anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it is. As 20 years ago, if you wanted to base jump, you had to make your own gear or have a very in-depth understanding of it. There was no one, you're not going to go to the park and there's 10 more base jumpers that are going to help you hook up your canopy or your risers, or like, oh, is this rip in this? Should I fix it or not? That's different nowadays. I was super lucky with Max. He's a rigger, a parachute rigger, and loves making his own stuff. We bought a few sewing machines and put them upstairs at the house, and we started our own little rigging business. So we're making base gear, fixing stuff for people, patching canopies, kind of doing everything that's very involved with the gear, making our own stuff, cutaway systems, risers, you name it. We're basically doing it, like manufacturing our own base gear to an extent. And that's what gave me the knowledge. He taught me how to sew, how to understand all this stuff. And now I take it for granted. I don't even think about it. But I see people who don't understand it. I'm like, whoa, like you're at a major disadvantage. Not just for like a safety reason, but yourself. Like it would give you way more confidence to understand actually how this stuff's worked, what all these things mean, how stuff's put together, like what.
You mean like in terms of gear fear, or?
Yeah, and just understanding how stuff works too. Like a lot of people don't know why a curved pin is designed the way it is, but if you do, that helps give you some more confidence for low handheld jumps where you want your pins in the right orientation so they're not locking up at all or hesitating, and understanding bridle length, and if you're getting into those specialty jumps, you need special gear sometimes, and you can't buy it, so you have to make it or modify your current gear, and having an understanding of that it opens the door to so many more things with confidence. So I think.
Do you think that people don't have that because it's not required? Do you think it's because of the state of education? Do you think it's a mix of the two? Where are we at with this?
That's hard to say. I think base has been very commercialized in a transactional way. Someone hits 200 skydives, they sign up, pay on PayPal for their course, they show up at the bridge, do their thing, go home. It's a lack of mentorship, I think, and mentors with the skill sets. I was super lucky that my mentor was a rigger and had a passion for that and wanted to share it with me. I think most base instructors aren't riggers, and then I know of one course in the States that incorporates quite a bit of rigging knowledge, which is really good. But I don't think that's built into the courses these days, and it's kind of skipped, until someone has to learn it or they seek it out on their own if they're motivated. But I highly recommend it to anybody. It's an easy thing to do a rigging course, or even just ask, at the loft at your skydiving drop zone, bring a 6-pack of beers and hang out with the rigger and watch what they're doing. Whether it's sewing a container together, fixing a patch on a canopy, just kind of asking questions, understanding stuff. When someone hooks up a new canopy, be like, oh, can I watch how you do that? Like what lines need to go where? Like how do you properly tension a hard link? How do you put together slinks? How do you inspect a new base container? That's one thing too. Life-saving gear, you should have a thorough understanding of it. People get brand new gear in the mail and it's all packaged up nice. It's got the check mark of approval, but are you really trusting someone else at the end of the day to say your gear's good to go for yourself to send it off a cliff and put a crazy amount of force on this? Like I always, even now with the best gear out there, I'll look at every stitch on the container and check the lines, bar tacks, all this before I'm jumping it. So
yeah, I think the first new base gear that I bought was missing bar tacks.
Yeah,
on some of the lines.
It happens.
And I took it to Pete Swan, and because I wasn't really sure, I wanted to have the confidence of having a master rigger look over my gear, and sure enough, he's like, "Look at
you got a problem here."
Yeah. And that's vital
for sure.
Yeah, inspecting your own gear when you get it, even when it's new. We're humans.
Yeah, and it's fun too. Like I have so much fun sewing stuff, building gear, like playing around with rigging stuff. It's a good time. It's adult Legos, you know. So yeah.
You know, when I first approached you, I wanted to talk more about slider down jumping, and I think you have a lot to share on that in terms of gear selection and whatnot. Where should we start with that?
Yeah, that's a big topic. I think diving into one specific part of it is easier, and specifically low jumping. We'll keep it simple with static line low jumping. A lot of people want to do these low jumps. They see them on the internet. They have this water tower or antenna or building in their town. They're like, oh, I've always wanted to jump this one building in my hometown. Like, how do I do that? And there's not a lot of people who like to do that style of jumping or have a big set of knowledge and skills around it. And that can be difficult. What is the technique? Progressively getting to where you want to go. For example, if you have a 100-foot building in your town, but your lowest jump you've done is a 300-foot handheld jump, you know, off of a bridge somewhere in Arizona or something before, that's a big gap you need to close, and it's not going to happen overnight. You can't just go, you know, send that building with confidence. For me, I always wanted to jump all the objects around me and be able to jump everywhere, and that I had to get good at low jumping. And Max and I approached it together, and we're like, all right, we want to eventually be able to jump at this height. We've seen someone do it with our gear and it looked good. Like, how can we do that? And we started kind of with something we knew would be good. So like a 200 foot antenna, and that was super low for us at the time. We're like, whoa, this is like, I can see the ground. We can talk to each other from the exit to the landing. This is crazy. And we did a bunch of reps on that, and we're like, cool. Once we're feeling good, we found something that was 180 feet. And we would go do the same thing on that, and then 160 feet. And then we're like, ooh, this is getting sporty. Like, maybe our old gear with 500 jumps isn't good. So we got new gear. And then that opened up a whole new ball game. So I think approaching it step by step, like you do with anything, find something that you know is good, get reps on it, get familiar with grabbing your toggles, the brake surge. That's a big part that people don't think about. It's not just on a low jump where soon after you're grabbing your toggles, you're flaring. There's a lot that happens in between that with the canopy wanting to speed up to a full flight and dive, and what you're doing with your hands and how that affects the canopy. So learning that up high on something where you have room, you know, being quick on your toggles, learning how different winds affect what you're doing. You just have to do it with repetition in your gear. If you want to jump low stuff, you need specific gear. Ideally a fully vented canopy, you know, with a ZP nose, something that's modern. You know, there's a lot of good options out there these days. Just to name, you know, a few, like OSP is wonderful, Hayduk's wonderful. The Alt-T from Adrenaline, people are having good success with that. Those are, you know, 3 options of fully vented canopies that are fully capable of this sort of jumping. So having the right gear is important.
How different would you say the different parachutes out there are in terms of, I mean, how much variety or variance are there in between those different parachutes?
Without pointing at specific brands, I think there's 2 parachutes out there that really stand apart in terms of low jumping, and they're both capable of the same thing, but they're going to feel slightly different. And that's really what it comes down to, is the pilot's preference. I think they both perform in the same neighborhood. You can do the same thing with both. It's just preference of how you're flying. Like, it's 2 sports cars and they have slightly different feeling, you know, like the brakes might hit different, or this one might power through the corner better, have, you know, better gear shifting, but this one, yeah, just different feel.
Like any activity that involves humans, people have some really strong opinions.
Yeah.
And I asked you that question because I'm not involved in that discipline. So I'm just kind of curious if you're experiencing very similar performance, or if one is drastically different than another.
You know, I have a bias because I have 1,000+ jumps with one more than the other. For me, it's the feel and what I jump and what you're familiar with, and where you jump as well. You know, if you're jumping in Moab all the time, you're probably going to want something that, you know, unless you're current and skilled, you're going to want something that flies slower, or is maybe more forgiving and deep brakes. And then if you're jumping in places where you have big open landing areas, like maybe you can go more on the performance side. And that's not saying you can't use one for the other. That's just, if you grab one out of the bag, which one is going to be easier to access those with less reps, less training on it before. I like a parachute that, I feel the full brake range, opens consistently, good heading performance, good pressurization, has good glide, good speed, all those things you can use to your advantage. But also with any parachute misused, if you mess it up enough, like every parachute can also put you in a bad spot. It doesn't matter what the make and model is. But yeah, people are super emotionally attached to their gear and their brands they use. And I get it. It's a thing that's saving your life, and you have a very intimate connection with over a long period of time. And once you're used to something, it's hard to change from that. So I get it. I think for the lesson though is it's the pilot, not the canopy. So you can do a lot with a lot of different parachutes. It's just how you use it. So
I would say within the first 5 years that I was base jumping, there was lots of, well, maybe even longer actually. There was a brand war. There were brand wars.
Yeah, for sure.
And I feel like that has toned down quite a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, you agree?
I think so. Even when I started jumping, like if you were jumping one thing and packing, someone would make a comment or vice versa, whatever it may be. And you don't really see that these days. People recognize that there's different weapons for different fights, and they respect people's choices and reasons why they use what they use. And it's less like, oh, this about this gear. It's like, oh, cool. Like, what do you like about that? What benefit does that give you? And that's a more open conversation these days. That's met with less judgment. So
yeah, that's good. That's good to hear. That's just silly shit, really.
It's a stupid way to use your energy, I think. So.
Well put. So where do you see yourself going next? What are your goals?
That's a good question. And for me, like my favorite thing is learning new stuff. And I'm having so much fun right now with the acro paragliding thing. I haven't felt this much excitement about learning something new in a long time. So that's taken a lot of my time at the moment.
We've been having a little bit of trouble with weather lately, I would say.
Man,
this winter I have a new base harness. I'm all ready to do my acro training.
You got a cutaway harness.
Yeah.
Nice.
And man, the weather's just been not cooperative.
It's been rough. Yeah. If you're motivated, you can get after it. But or if you drive enough, I should say, by motivated, there's spots to fly. But yeah, it's getting harder and harder to participate in these sports all the time. But that's the beauty of having multiple sports to do.
That's right.
Like, okay, it's probably protected in Lauterburn. I could drive there today. Well, it's bad for XC paragliding, and then, oh, cool, it's good up high for winds. I can go speed ride on at 3,000 meters or whatever it may be. But for me, I love learning. I try my best to not be stale or stagnant in anything, even if I've been doing it for a while, like trying to progress and pick up new things and get better. And acro has been kind of the spot where I've been able to push this and spend the most time recently with the most reward in my head. But yeah, kind of, I'm 26 years old, and I feel like this is the time of life where I can kind of mess around a bit more and spend my time out here, hone in some skills before getting too serious about, more job stuff or relationships and family and all these things. So I'm just along for the ride, having fun. And,
that's good, man.
Trying to be safe.
That's wise. That's a good, for this phase of life, that's where you should be.
Yeah, it's been fun. Being out in Europe has been a really good time, a good culture shift and experiencing new places and new things. And yeah, it'll be a good period to look back on in the future, I think. And yeah, just trying to maximize every day and be in the moment and make the most of it. So
yeah, I mean, like if I was going to play the older brother, I would say enjoy this time, maybe like peak up a little bit and, consider your heading.
Yeah, for sure.
But enjoy it while it lasts.
Yeah, no, for sure. And it's kind of full energy and steam into air sports at the moment. And I have thought about those, like, okay, like how do we do this so I can put some money in good investments in the future? and have some strategies for that and other routes to go down. But for now, it's full air sports, trying to get better and improve. And yeah, I'm having a lot of fun with it. It's the best. I love this stuff.
Well, awesome, man. It's been a real pleasure chatting with you and getting to know you. And yeah, I look forward to flying with you soon.
Cheers, though. Appreciate it, man. Thanks for having me. Awesome.
We hope you enjoyed this episode. If you have any thoughts about what you've just heard, please don't hesitate to hit us up. A big shout out to Mark Stockwell, our sound mixer and co-producer. We love you, man. If you'd like to learn more about the podcast, please visit exitpointpodcast.com. See you on the next one.